Hi, this is DROdio. I'm the owner of DROdio Real Estate. This presentation that I'm going to show today is really meant for our agents, although if you are currently a realtor in the Washington, D.C., Virginia, Maryland area and not one of our agents, but you're interested in becoming one, I would encourage you to go to DROdio.com/jobs, which will take you to a page that talks about our firm, DROdio Real Estate. We've been featured in a number of news publications for our use of technology. There's a lot of information here on joining us, and you can learn more about us. And you can always contact me by calling this number here, the call anytime number, and that will go straight to our office. So let me tell you what I'd like to show you today. We have created a spreadsheet tool that allows us to do some pretty amazing comps. So I'm going to show you how to use that. By the time this presentation's over, you should have a good understanding of how this tool works and how you can use it to really blow your competition away, honestly. It's almost not fair. So let's start with Matrix, because this all begins with Matrix, which you should be familiar with. And the first thing that I'm going to do is to show you how we set up our columns, because what we're going to do is we're going to set up a custom view in Matrix. So you go to My Matrix, and then you click on, and I have to find it here, Custom Displays. Click on Custom Displays, and you'll see here that I have something called DROdio Listing Compare. So I'm going to edit that. Now you would actually want to, instead of hitting edit, hit add. Make sure that you are in the listing table and the residential table here, listing and residential, and you're going to hit add. Let me just show you what happens when you hit add. It's going to have a number of columns here on the left side, and the selected columns are going to be blank on the right side. Okay, so I'm actually going to go back and I'm going to hit edit, and you'll see a similar view with content in the selected columns. So you just want to name your display here, anything you want, it doesn't matter what you name it. And then you're going to want to select a number of columns from the left side here and move them over to the right side where it says selected columns. Here are the ones that you want to have. And what I recommend that you do is just pause this presentation and look through these and take your time adding them from the left side. They're alphabetical to the right side, but I'll go through them. The MLS number, advertised subdivision, the property's address, the city, move this over a little here, the levels, bedrooms, baths full, baths half, status, list date, contract date, close date, days on market, DOMM, days on market, DOMP for property, the list price, the listing low price, the close price, the seller subsidy amount, the county tax amount, the assessment year, the total assessment, buyer agent commission, fireplaces, above grade area finished, basement yes or no, basement area finished, basement entrance, parking, garage type, garage spaces, carport spaces, cooling, cooling fuel, heating fuel, hot water, appliances, HOA, elementary school, middle school, high school, year built, HOA fee, and condo co-op fee. Now you'll notice that I have also unchecked everything in these special columns. That's very important that you uncheck everything that's down here. And you need to make sure that you have this in the exact right order, because if you don't have it in the exact right order, the system that we're going to use is not going to work. So check it and then double check it. The width doesn't matter. The label has to stay the same as it is, so don't change it. Just add these to your selected columns and then hit done at the bottom here, or save. Okay, I'm going to hit cancel just because I already have it done, but you should hit save. Once you have that done, we have a special view that's going to allow us to transfer data between Matrix and the Excel spreadsheet. So we're just using a little trick here where we're going to basically scrape some data off of the web page and throw it into the Excel spreadsheet. You'll notice that the Excel spreadsheet has these same column names that you just added: MLS number, advertised subdivision, address, city, etc. So I'll come back to this, but the idea is that we're going to take the data off of the web page, put it into Excel, where we can then manipulate it a little bit. Okay, so for now, let me show you how you would actually use this tool. So let's just do a search, and this is very important because the search that you do is going to affect the data that you're manipulating later. So for example, let's say that we have a client in McLean, Virginia, who's interested in selling their home. And then they have a single family home and it has 4 bedrooms, and they want to sell it, and they're asking us, how much should we list it for? Well, most realtors will do what's called a CMA, which you can do also right here, but I don't think that provides a really in-depth view into what somebody should sell the property for. So we've created this Excel spreadsheet that's much more detailed. Okay, so while most realtors would do a CMA, we're going to do something different. We are going to do a search and look for properties that have listed in the same area as this client of ours over, let's say, the past 12 months. So I'm going to say McLean as the city, and I'm going to say list date was January 1st, 2007 or later. We're in the beginning of January 2008 as I make this, so that'll give us about the last year of listing data. Let's look for properties that have the same number of bedrooms, so we'll say 4 bedrooms. In our fictional example here, our client has 4 bedrooms. We'll also say that it's a detached home, and as a default I have for sale yes, meaning that it's not going to show rentals, it's only going to show for sale properties. I'm not going to pick a status because I want to see everything that's been listed regardless of the status. So all I'm saying is that we're looking for detached properties in McLean with exactly 4 bedrooms that have been listed in the last year. And let's see how many that gives us. So I'm going to hit search. Now my goal is to get about 100 results. So you'll see here that doing that search gives me 346 results. That's too many. I mean, I could use all 346, but that's more than I really need. So I'm going to hit the back button, and I'm going to edit this. There's a lot of ways that you could edit it. I could make it less time. I could make it from June 1st instead of January 1st. That would give me a smaller sample size. But I don't necessarily want to do that because the market's been changing and I want to be able to see the trends. So I don't just want to limit it. Like if I look for June 1st, 2007 instead of January, I'm going to exclude all the properties that were listed in January but haven't sold because they've been on the market for almost a year. And that would be bad. So I'd rather not limit the search in that way. Another way that I could limit it is I could look for only a certain number of baths, or I could look between a certain listing price. But again, I feel that if I constrain it by listing price, then I'm going to be skewing the data. So it's all kind of an effort here to not skew the data. I could also look in a specific zip code, or often one thing that I will do is I'll look in a specific advertised subdivision, so I'm just pulling comps from the client's neighborhood. That's a good way to narrow down your data. But in this specific case, let's look by year built. Okay, let's say that our client's house was built in 1985. So I'm going to look from 1975 to 1995. So that's going to cut out some number of homes. Let's see what that gives us. That gives us 62 results. So that's a good number. Now I know that the new McMansion type homes are not going to be skewing the results. So you don't necessarily have to use the date to constrain it, but that's not a bad way to do it. It definitely introduces less bias than if you had searched only by a certain price range, for example. My favorite way to constrain the results is by putting in a specific advertised subdivision, and my second favorite way is probably by putting in the year built. Okay, so this gives us 62 results, and you're probably pretty familiar with this results list where it gives, a human readable version is what I call it, where you could click on one of these and it would give us details on the property. But that's not what we want for the purposes of this tool. Instead, we want to scroll down to the bottom, and where it says display, we're going to change the display to the new one that we created, which the one that's called for me is DROdio Listing Compare. So I'm going to hit DROdio Listing Compare, and now your display should look just like this, where there's nothing clickable. I can't click anywhere and get to the data. It's basically just a big text block. So, but that's what we want, because we want to move this data into Excel so that we can start to manipulate it and work with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start right below where it says ML number. I'm going to start at the first result, and I'm going to hold down my mouse button, and I'm going to just drag it down, and that's going to copy all of this data. So, or it's going to highlight it. And then once I have it all highlighted, I'm going to press Control C on a Windows or Apple C on a Mac to copy it, or you can also right click on it to, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. You can also right click on it to copy the data. So I'm actually going to try to make sure here that I've copied this data. So hold on one second. And let's see if we can right click. I don't know if it's going to let me right click on this data to copy it. Hold on. I'll just do Control C to copy it. So I know you can't see it on the screen, but I'm doing Control C right now to copy the data. So I should have this all copied. Now, by the way, if you want to, you can click on these headings at the top to order by a certain status. For example, now all the actives are together, all the contracts are together. You can order by the advertised subdivision, for example, by clicking on that. So what you need to know is the data that you pull into the Excel spreadsheet is very important, because we're only going to be analyzing whatever we find, and you can find different things by doing different searches. It doesn't really matter for the purposes of the spreadsheet if you order it in a different way, like by the subdivision or by the status, by clicking on these, because the data is still going to be the same, but just as a human, it might be a little easier to see. Like, for example, if I order it by status, so I'm going to click it again so that all the actives show up first. So now I have all my actives here. Then I'm going to re-highlight this data because I want to copy it in the same order that I ordered it in. So let me make sure I've got it all there. I'm going to copy it. Now I'm going to go down to the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet should be version 9 is the most recent version that we have. And when it opens up, it should have a blue box here that's already highlighted. That is the old set of data. So what you want to do is you want to delete that old data that's in there, because we're going to put new data in. So you want to go to Edit, Clear, and then Contents. Okay, most of you can just press the delete key because it's highlighted. And when I do that, you'll see that everything disappears. This is still highlighted in blue, but all this has disappeared. Okay? Well, watch what happens now. I'm going to click in this box, which is right below the ML number box. I'm going to click here so that I get rid of that blue highlighting, and then I'm going to paste in all of my data. So let's give it a second. All right, I have pasted in all of my data. And I've also created some kind of problem here because it's not liking what it's finding. So let me just hold on a second and let me see why it's not liking this. Let's take a look and see if there's something that's out of place. Oh, okay. All right. I know what we have to do. All right. So I'm actually going to open up a different version of the spreadsheet, and I'll be right back because there's one other thing that we have to do. So I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. I am back, and I actually had the wrong version of the spreadsheet. So the one that we're using right now is called the DROdio analysis document, and we're right back here where we were with empty data. Everything that I showed you up to that point is perfectly correct. You want to start with your cursor in the box right under ML number, and you're going to paste in the data. So give it a second to paste in. It's thinking. I'm going to go ahead and pause this until the data comes in, so I'll be right back. Let me pause it. Oh, you know what? We're good to go here. So here's our data. Now there's a couple things that you have to do. One thing that you have to do is you have to hit Clean Data. So let me go ahead and hit that. And that's going to run a macro that's going to get rid of some spaces that are in the statuses. There's an extra little space after the word active. I'll highlight it. There's a little space there that we don't want, so we run a macro to get rid of all those spaces, and that's what happens when you hit Clean Data. So make sure that you remember to hit the Clean Data button that's right here. So now some neat things happen. First of all, here's all of our data. We can see that it's all right here, and if some of the columns are showing pound signs, you can just expand the size of the column so that it shows the actual numbers. There we go. So here's all the data that we pulled in from Matrix, but now it's in a format where we can use it in some interesting ways. So let me scroll back to the left here. So you'll see that there are two columns here. There's one that's brown and there's one that's blue. The brown one is a bunch of formulas. If you see up here, there's some pretty complex formulas that are through all of these columns, and the same thing over here. There's just formulas everywhere. And what these formulas do is they take this data that we've put in, they start giving us information. So for example, for this specific row here, we can see that for this house that was on 1211 Summit Road, the total square footage was 2,550 square feet. And the way that we know that's true is if we scroll over, we'll see that it's got the square footage from the matrix data. And let's see, it shows the above grade finished was 1802, the basement finished is 748. So our formula is adding those two numbers together for us. We can also see, and let me go back over here to where we were right here, that the list price per square foot is $372.16 per square foot. Well, how do we calculate that? Here's how we calculate it. We take the list price, which is listed over here, $949, and we divide it by the entire square footage, which is 2550. So this spreadsheet is automatically doing that math for you. If the property had sold, you would see a price per square foot for the sale numbers and a difference number. So for example, for this property down here, this property has sold, 1233 Beverly Road, and it sold for less than it listed for. How do I know that? Because it's a 3,300 square foot property. It was listed at $286 per square foot. It sold for $272 per square foot. So the difference is $13.64 less per square foot. And we'll see that the raw data will back us up here. We can see that the list price was $945. They lowered it down to $945, so they didn't lower it at all, but it closed, sorry, there's the headings, it closed for $900,000. So it closed for $45,000 less, or on a per square foot basis, it was $13.64 less than the asking price. So that's what all these numbers are. These are calculated automatically for you. Over here, we can see what's called the list ratio and the sale ratio. The list ratio calculates the difference between the listing price and the county tax assessment. So we can see, for example, that this first property here, right here, Beverly Manor, 1211 Summit Road, was listed at 1.33 times what its county assessment was. There's no sale ratio because it hasn't sold, but if we go down to, for example, this property, which is at 1405 Grady Randall Court, we can see that it listed for 1.1 times its tax assessed value, and it sold for 1.12 times. Now, here's something that's really, really important that you have to do. You need to scroll over to where the assessments are. So here it says county tax and assess year, and you'll notice that there's different years here. And you can't have different years in your assessments because you're comparing apples and oranges when you do. So you have to get rid of one of the years. So for example, I'm going to get rid of, hold on one second, I'm going to get rid of all of the 2006 assessment numbers. So let me just get rid of those here. Get rid of this block here because I'm only going to use 2007 numbers, because to do anything different would be comparing apples to oranges, and I don't want to compare apples to oranges, obviously. Get rid of this data here. This is a little slower for me than it will be for you at home because my delete key doesn't work exactly like yours does. I'm actually running Windows on my Macintosh computer, and the delete key is a little finicky when I'm running Windows, so I have to do it one by one. But you can just highlight all of the 2006s and then hit delete. Just take another minute here, get rid of everything that's 2006. So I'm just going to stick with my 2007s. Now, if there were a lot of 2006s and not many 2007s, then you could just get rid of the 2007s and keep all the 2006s. It's not quite as good because the data's older, but at least it's consistent. All right, so we've gotten rid of all that data now. So now that incorrect data will not be there. Okay, so this isn't even the coolest part. Let me tell you why this is great. First, let me say Joe User is the name of the property, and he's at 1234 Main Street in McLean, Virginia. So that put some info in for him. Now I'm going to click on where it says summary stats of raw data. Okay? And when I do that, or you can also click down here where it says summary data, this tab down here. Now, and you know what, let me just do one other thing. This Joe user, I think, has to be in a different column for it to show up here, because it should be showing up. Well, you know what, we'll just put it in here. Joe user, 1234 Main Street, McLean, Virginia. Now where it says search criteria right here, what I can do is go back to Matrix and go to the bottom, and it tells me the search criteria. So I'm just going to grab this and copy it, and then I'm going to go back over to my Excel spreadsheet, and I'm just going to paste it in here. That way I know how I got this data. Okay? So here's where this gets really useful. We have several columns. We have a summary column. We have a column of only active properties. We have a column of sold properties. We have a column of properties that are only under contract. And we have a column showing withdrawn properties. So this spreadsheet is actually going to parse through the raw data that's on this page, and it's going to break it out into different categories. So now I can see the average list price for only active properties in McLean is $1,178,000. For sold properties, it's $1,269,000. Well, that's interesting that the price has been going down from sold to active. And so you can have conversations with your client about these numbers. We can also see that the average days on market down here is 148 for our active properties. For our solds, it's 71. We can actually also see how many properties fit in these different criteria. There's even a little chart here that shows us that most of the properties have been sold. There's some active, a lot of withdrawns, and a few that are under contract. So because of that, I wouldn't really put too much faith in these under contract numbers, because there's only 2 results that it's pulling the data from. So I would say to my client, you know, the sold number of days on the market is 147. The active is 148. So properties are staying on the market about as long as they were. Looks like prices have gone down a bit. We can see that the average seller subsidy for sold properties is $14,000. Excuse me. Sorry about that. The average post-dated list price is 1.28. Here's how we get that number. If you scroll over to the right here, we don't want to scroll over too much, and we scroll down, we'll see a gold box that says pricing per foot to current day values. So we're saying here the properties, we're assuming they're appreciating by 5% per year, but let's actually put a negative number in. Let's say that on average properties are going down by maybe 2% a year. So now we can see that this is going to give us a set of numbers that should be more accurate. So these are our actual numbers. 1,241,000 is the average of all these different statuses. But we can say this isn't exactly true because this was over the past year. If we were to assume that all of these things happened today, it would give us a different number, 1,225,000, which is a little bit lower. It's doing the math by taking that gold box and assuming a negative 2% appreciation or 2% depreciation per year is going to depreciate the actual numbers. So this kind of gives us a way to say if all of these 60-some, let's see, we have 62 results. If all of these transactions had happened today, what would this number look like? It would look like this. Okay? Here is the subsidy number, which is the average list price minus the average sales price here. Okay? And this is the average square footage size, the average price per square foot, the average tax assessment, the average tax assessment ratio. I mean, this just gives you all sorts of data to work with your client. So to all the DROdio agents out there, please do not send this as an Excel spreadsheet to your client. Please print this to PDF or give them a hard copy, because this is a very valuable spreadsheet and we developed it in-house here. It should not be used by other agents. Okay, one last thing. The address here of our client is 1234 Main Street, right? Which was just pulled from this data here. Just pulled it over here. So in this orange specific property report, we can put in stats for our specific client's home. So let's say that our client's home was 4,000 square feet and the current assessment was $999,000. Or it's probably going to be more than that, $1,100,000. Did I get that right? Yep. Okay. Now, this is probably the most powerful part of this whole tool. This data is going to say, well, if your client's house is 4,000 square feet and the average price per square foot is $290,000 based on this search, then your client's house is probably worth $1,161,000. And it gives a range here because there is a range. For example, for the active properties, those are selling for more. Those are selling for $314 per square foot. So I can kind of ballpark here between these two numbers, $310,000 and $320,000. It's probably worth between $1.24 and $1.28 million. So this is handy because this lets us apply the data to our client's specific property, and clients love to see this. We can also use the pricing by assessment. Remember how there was a ratio between the assessed value and the listing price? Well, the average ratio is 1.17. That's the average ratio between the listing price and the county assessment value. So if we take 1.17 times the assessment of our client's home, which we said was $1.1 million, you can see that based on an assessment ratio, the house might be worth 1.292. So this gives us a real good range. It's probably worth somewhere between 1.16 and $1.29 million. And that's averages. That's assuming that the client's house is average compared to the other homes that are on the market. If it's not average, if it has a larger backyard or something that most of the other homes don't have, then you would want to adjust the price accordingly. But this tool is very valuable to allow you to do comps and walk in and just blow the seller away compared to what any other realtor might have to offer. Hope you enjoy the presentation. And again, my name is DROdio. I'm the owner of DROdio Real Estate. If you have any more questions, don't hesitate to ask. Thanks.